As you may have seen in some of our other shows, while it may seem a contradiction to some people, in conflicts all sides should follow a set of rules concerning the ethics of warfare. You have likely heard of the Geneva Conventions, which are a set of treaties and protocols that ask countries if they should fight against each other, they should at least try to do that following humanitarian principles. For example, countries should care for the wounded, they should not abuse POWs, they should respect a soldier's religion, and they should not use weapons deemed unfair play on the battleground. And it's the latter which we'll discuss today in this episode of the Infographics Show, Banned Weapons in Warfare, Blinding Laser Weapons. We'll start with weapons that sound kind of modern, and these are the tools that could be used to destroy the eyesight of enemies. These types of weapons were banned under Protocol 4 of the 1980 Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, and the protocols covered weapons that could permanently blind someone, not just temporarily dazzle a person. Do such weapons exist? Motherboard wrote in 2014 that indeed, the USA has many lasers that could permanently blind a person, but the country does not use them for that purpose. But sometimes there was a fine line between dazzling and doing much worse. The US media has said China has some very similar technology, calling some weapons blinding lasers. And while no soldiers have been blinded as of yet, the US military has asked if these weapons don't breach the protocols. Landmines. Possibly a soldier's worst nightmare are landmines, explosives which have been used in various war movies to show us just how barbaric war can be. Under the Protocol on Prohibitions or Restrictions of the Use of Mines, Booby Traps, and Other Devices, landmines are now at least restricted. Non-detectable anti-personnel mines are not allowed, as are mines that are placed outside fenced areas. According to the UN, a lot of damage is still being done, as there is still so many mines laying around the world. According to an article written by UNICEF, there are around 110 million mines globally that are just waiting for someone to walk over them. There's no date on this article, but it said hundreds of people around the world are still being killed by landmines every year. As for booby traps, you can find lots of articles written about how they were used during the Vietnam War. Thankfully, in conventional warfare, these things are now also banned. Flamethrowers. Another weapon you may have seen in numerous war movies is the flamethrower. These are called incendiary weapons, and they're now banned for certain uses under the Protocol on Prohibitions or Restrictions on the Use of Incendiary Weapons. They're not completely banned, it just depends on what you intend to do with them. You cannot, for example, use them to destroy houses and the people inside the houses. You're not even supposed to use them to burn down forests or even bushes. You can, however, use them for clearing woodland if the land is thought to be hiding combatants or other things related to combat. Historians tell us that all sides during the two world wars were big on using these devices, mostly to do things like empty trenches and holes where soldiers might be hiding. The website The Balance tells us, during the Korean and Vietnam Wars, United States Marines also used flamethrowers. In those combat environments, flamethrowers were used to destroy forts, bunkers, and vehicles. They were also used to inflict psychological terror on enemy soldiers who were terrified of being burned alive. Not surprisingly, these weapons were very controversial, and in 1978 the US said enough is enough, we're not using them again. The same goes for napalm. While it's not completely banned, it can't really be used in warfare to kill people. Cluster bombs. Many countries around the world have signed the Convention on Cluster Munitions Treaty. These are bombs designed to be dropped and then expel a number of smaller bombs, sometimes called bomblets. For this reason, sometimes in the US they got the nickname popcorn bombs or firecrackers. As you can imagine, these things can be a bit unpredictable, and so it's not always easy to judge what will be destroyed. This is the reason many countries have now agreed that they should be used no more. This only happened fairly recently though, and you can find examples of when these kind of bombs were used by the UK, the US, and many other countries not that long ago. One of the main reasons for trying to stop the use of these things is that those bomblets might remain unexploded, and then one day a very unfortunate civilian comes across one of them. Nerve gas. If any of you have seen the TV show Homeland, you'll know that possibly one of the most frightening things in the world is what's known as nerve gas. In that show, the use of sarin, a kind of nerve gas, was explored. While Homeland could be said to be quite implausible at times, how it depicted sarin was by no means over the top. What basically happens when you're hit by the nerve gas is your body malfunctions, your nervous system stops working, internal hemorrhaging happens, and death is likely to follow. Before that, you might start foaming at the mouth, suffer convulsions, and then pee and poo yourself. Your organs will then stop working, and that's the end. Mustard gas. This is another nasty chemical agent that does very nasty things to people. You can see what it did by reading about the 2 world wars. Those that experienced mustard gas poisoning might experience temporary blindness. They might suffer horrible burns on their skin, and their lungs can be severely damaged. If they don't die, soldiers often had to endure horrific pain from severe burns. Nowadays, it's unlikely you'll see the use of this gas, as most countries have ratified the Chemical Weapons Convention. Mustard gas is known as a blister agent, but other gases, such as phosgene gas and hydrogen cyanide, are also banned. Tear gas. You might be surprised to hear that tear gas is banned in war, just because it's still quite regularly used on citizens. It's still a chemical weapon, but it's one of the least harmful weapons of its kind. For that reason, it can still be used to disperse crowds of rioters, but using it on the battleground would be sending a bad message. In a riot, it's believed that this gas can prevent a more deadly or at least aggressive use of force. That's why it's still being used today. Spike pit. It sounds like something John Rambo might come up with, but these pits were used in some conflicts until they were outlawed under the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, also known as punji sticks. They were basically a hole in the ground with some very sharp sticks. The hole was then covered with something so that anyone walking in its direction wouldn't notice anything. When it was stepped on, the soldier would fall into the pit and land on the spikes. This would cause severe pain, and it would be incredibly difficult to get out of this trap. It's also said that sometimes the spikes would be covered with poison or even human feces, so that infection would occur. The point would not be to kill someone, but to maim them and so slow down everyone else. Biological weapons. You may have seen in some of our other shows that militaries all over the world have spent a considerable amount of time trying to invest ways to spread disease among enemies, sometimes called germ warfare. We might look back to the 18th century when the English military were busy trying to spread smallpox through some Native American societies. We're told that with a green light given by Winston Churchill, tularemia, anthrax, brucellosis, and botulism were made into weapons during World War II. It wasn't only the British though. France, Germany, the USA, and Japan were all busy weaponizing disease. You name it, all the leading nations of the world were doing the same thing, at times weaponizing even the bubonic plague. Thanks to the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention, we hope that those days might be over, although that won't have any effect on the work that terrorists do. We might also add that in the past, such weapons weren't only designed to hurt people directly, but they were there to spoil crops and make livestock sick. Dirty bombs. These things were designed to radiate an area and so make that place uninhabitable. These did not have a blast, but as we said, just created a lot of radiation over a given area. We're told that they likely wouldn't even have caused that much damage, but they instilled fear in communities and so were useful. Bat bombs. We've designated an entire show to these utterly strange things, so you should take a look at that. What these were is what they sound like, which were bats carrying small bombs. They were designed by the USA to fly over Japan, and there, lots of bats would be released and each bat would find a safe place to hide down in the city. Many buildings at the time were made from wood, and when the bat bomb went off, a fire would start. Such things these days would be banned under Protocol 3 of the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. You can't exactly control where the bat will go, and you're not allowed to use weapons when you have no idea what the target will be. This could cause untold harm to civilians. Invisible fragments. An entire protocol in the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons is Protocol 1, which restricts weapons with non-detectable fragments. This is simple enough. You can't employ any kind of weapon which might leave bits of itself in another person that cannot be seen, even with X-ray. That means that you're not allowed to make a weapon that leaves plastic in the body, as this can be hard to find. You can use plastic in a weapon's production, but plastic shouldn't be part of the design primarily to hit the person or persons. We should add at the end here that many countries have agreed not to use these weapons, but others have not signed the treaties. Some countries have also signed, but done that with what are called reservations. Do you think these weapons should have been banned? Would you like to see anything else added to this list? Tell us in the comments. Also, be sure to watch our other video, What is Banned in War? Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.